Today we are going to have our sir, Dr. Kaviraj Udupa's talk. Before going into the talk, we can have we just start with the prayer, and we have a short introduction about our resource person today, and then we can move on to the talk. Hands in Namaskar Mudra. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Gunatu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavagitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good morning.
Who's introducing now? Balaji.
Yes, sir. Namaste to everyone. Good morning. Welcome you for the third day of this wonderful international FTP. And today we have one of the great yogi, a dynamic speaker, who is a medical doctor, a neurophysiologist also, and ever smiling, our Kavi sir, dear Kavi sir, Dr. Kaviraj Udupa. He's a professor at Department of Neurophysiology at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience, NIMHANS. Sir also has done a postdoctoral fellow in neurophysiology research at Toronto, Canada. Just sharing the few basic important things which Kaviraj sir has achieved both academically and personally. And sir is a peer-reviewed publications of more than 137 research articles with multiple citation index and more than 100 abstracts and more than 20 book chapters and 2 theses. His research contributions: 6 extramural research grants as a principal investigator, 13 research grants as a co-investigator, 4 fellowship grants and 10+ travel grants, 7 academic competitive awards, including the MDS AOS Junior Faculty Award, Professor James Sharpe Award, Professor Rene Distal Oration Award, and Professor G.K. Pal Award. 100+ invited scientific lectures, guest speeches at India, Canada, United States, and he has guided more than 10 PhDs, postdoctorals, MDs, and MPhil candidates. He is a scientific peer reviewer for 30+ national and international scientific journals and life members of 10+ professional organizations. Sir is a president of Bangalore chapter of Physiological Association and executive body member of the same thing. Actively conducted in 10+ national and international academic meetings, conferences, workshops, and as organizing secretary and team member. Sir research interests: neurobiology of mood and movement disorders and stress coping mechanism, neuromodulations, non-invasive transcranial magnetic stimulation, transcranial direct current stimulation, and vagal nerve stimulations, and invasive deep brain stimulations. Integrating the Indian system of medicine, yoga and Ayurveda with evidence-based medicine, autonomic nervous system and evaluation, heart rate and blood pressure variability, neurophysiology measures as a biomarkers in neurological and psychiatric disorders, electrophysiology and intraoperative neurophysiology monitoring, human ethics, spirituality, Sanatana and Adhyatama, and conscious research. So these are the few words about the great person, Dr. Kaviraj Udupa sir. We request you to speak on alleviating yoga to stress. Over to you, sir.
Before that, sorry to jump in, but I cannot help myself because whenever I am in the presence, either offline or online with my dear Kavibai, it helps my heart to come into a sinus rhythm with very good sympathovagal balance. I still remember our time at JIPMA. I had joined as a senior research fellow under Professor Madan Mohan sir. When my dear Kavibai, we met because he joined as a PG in physiology under Madan Mohan sir. And how many lunches and dinners we have had sitting together, and how much work we did together. Our first publications were joint publications. And today, to see the way my dear Kavibai has grown into the person he is today makes me so proud of him. And with these very small words of appreciation, I welcome you, my dear Kavibai, to bless us all with your wisdom.
Thank you, Anand Bhavanani sir, and I fondly call him as Anand Bhai. So, with your blessings, we've been working in this field, and today's my talk. Again, I would like to thank all the members of Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, Dayanidhi, Balaji, and Meena Madam, and all other eminent people there doing very good work in salutogenesis and integrating various systems of medicine. And I'll be talking on alleviation of stress through yoga. And is my slides visible?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
So I'd like to briefly talk on stress, which is the most rampant disorder, and is the pathological root cause for many of the medical conditions today. What we are seeing, not just the medical, but also social, economic, and all other related issues. If you go to the basic level, it would be the stress, I think, and neurobiology of stress, which induces various stress-induced disorders, and various evidences are there, both in animal model works as well as in patients with various neurological, psychiatric, other medical conditions, how stress lead to all these kind of disorders. We'll see how we can study this in terms of various biomarkers of stress, and how yoga helps in alleviating some of these stress-related coping mechanisms, and so the future directions, how we can get stress-free kind of environment through yoga. Of course, these things requires a higher amount of sadhana. To some extent, whatever the physical levels. In last week's talk, Meena Madam and Anand sir has nicely shown at different levels of yoga. When we do just the asana, pranayama, we do at the physical level. But when we do the higher levels, it will help to elevate one person's in yogic level. So we are talking mainly on the physical level, and of course, when we have achieved that, we can talk more on the higher levels of yoga. So this is a common diagram when we talk about stress. So to some extent, the stress is required, that we call as eustress. Our Madan Mohan sir is very fond of this. He used to tell eustress, and you have to have in this zone of comfort or optimal performance. You should not be in that comfort zone. You should stretch yourself to give an optimal performance, but that stretching should not be too much. That would cause delusion or zone of delusion, or it could lead to some amount of burnout when it goes beyond that. Just to give an example of the elastic band. So to have the optimal level of stress where we can get that thing is very much required. If it goes beyond certain levels, it will lead to this delusional zone or strain or burnout that we see in most of our patients who have these stress related disorders. So You should not be in the comfort zone also. You should be in this optimal zone. So of course, it should not be in the boredom levels also. And if you see the publications in this stress-related disorder, it has been increasing. And these are the pioneers, the Saley, Sapolsky and McEwan. Mainly, they have studied the animal models of stress, of course, how it induces the stress-related disorders they've been talking. So at different levels, at the physical level, we can see the stress leading to hypertension, diabetes, or various disorder, or in emotional levels, it lead to anger, anxiety, panic related disorders. At the behavior levels, interpersonal relations, aggressions, or it may lead to a reduced performance as such. And there are various pathways or pathological mechanisms, and it has been learned from various levels, from the molecular level to the system level. And of course, when stress is there, it is picked up by this hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis that lead to activation of the sympatho-adrenal axis, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Some of these things we will discuss in this talk. Mainly, we need to understand there are various mechanisms starting from the genetic levels, DNA, RNA changes, protein level changes, and that lead to oxidative stress mechanisms, formation of reactive oxygen species, glucocorticoids hypersecretion, lead to various disorders, including cancer, and other disorders, as we are going to see. The stress exposure would cause mainly the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis, and that lead to increased activation of this and lead to activation of the sympathetic system. So when we see an example to classically is given, when we see a snake, what is the response or the reaction that we see? So usually there will be activation of our amygdala, which is kind of stress sensing region of the brain, and that activates our coping mechanisms in terms of flight or fight reactions. These are classical 3Fs. Either we fly away from the scene, flight, or we first initially get frightened, then we either try to fight, and then we these are all the stress reactions. But this is for survival. This is there from in the evolution from millions of billions of years together, and this is there innate in our body whenever we have some kind of survival things, and it is well developed even in the animals. Say you just imagine a prey being predated by its higher animal. So they have to be active through 24/7, otherwise they can't survive. And this is the innate mechanisms which is there, the hypothalamus, amygdala, and other centers. They are activated in such a way that we react to that. But as a human being, we have this the higher areas, the prefrontal cortex, where we can really see whether it is really a need to give all these kind of reactions. So is it really, say for example, you have some, I'm sure lots of students watching this, and you have an exam coming. So one way you get stressed out, you won't be able to study with the higher amount of stress, and you drain yourself, or you go into that burnout zone. But the other way, you take this as a challenge, and you respond in such a manner that you optimally prepare yourself by reading or studying or whatever things required for that particular exam, and there you use your system in an optimal manner. So that is required from the students, or you can take it from any aspect of our life, be it our career, be it our family life, be it our social engagement. Anywhere you can take this stress model, where you need to understand your level and you have to perform in that optimal level using your the prefrontal region. Otherwise, it always you go into that fright or fight. Fight to some extent is required, but if you go into fright or fly away responses, you won't be able to achieve your goals. And of course, this is required when we are talking in terms of our survival mechanism. When a snake comes, you have to take a decision, whether it is a first you need to say whether it is really a poisonous snake or is it harming you. Then only you can respond, or you can put some the classic example we give if you have gone into a restaurant and you see a cockroach in the table. So what will be your reaction or response? So reaction would be you scream loudly and you make a scene out of it. But the response, the ideal response should be you take a empty cup and you put into that cockroach. Then you call the manager and you ask him why all these things are there. When most of the persons in today's world, we tend to react to that stress using all these sympathoadrenal mechanisms. We are not using our prefrontal cortex, which yoga helps to improve upon. So these prefrontal cortex studies have shown the regulatory pathways are there in these prefrontal cortices, which try to inhibit the reptilian or mammalian stress reaction zone. This is so the stress response is in a responsible manner. We can gauge how much is the actual stress, and we can respond to it in a more humane way. Say if one plate full of biscuits are kept in front of, say, a dogs, that to street dogs, not the pet dogs, they try to scream or make fight and other things. But the same thing, if I keep one plate full of biscuits in front of you all, so how many are there now? From 44 people are here. So then we, in a human way, we take one by one or take turn or we share those things. That yoga helps us to achieve. So that's what the humans, we are supposed to do. We are not supposed to fight among ourselves. Or today's world, you see, it's very competitive. There's so many wars going on: war for land, war for resources, war for position, chair, so many things. So that's actually because of this stress reaction, and we have to upgrade ourselves into the more prefrontal cortices using humans, not the reptilian or so-called lower. Even nowadays, the animals, they respond, especially pets and all. I've seen they wait for their turns, but as humans, we can't have their wait. And this is there in the evolution, and we try to look into some of these things. It's there in genetic manner, and how the sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. Rajasic people are more competitive in nature, whereas tamasic, of course, they do more extreme things. But we need to start some of these things can be achieved by this influence. So again, the same thing, how the perception of the stress, how the individual differences will be there. That's depending on the genes or development or the experience related. If you go into the just a fight or flight mode, that will lead to the trauma or abuse, and that how we the allostasis or the salutogenesis is maintained based on this. And of course, there are so many factors at the neuroendocrine level, immune level. So lead to, if it is not properly maintained, this allostasis if it is not properly maintained, it would lead to lots of disorders, starting from coronary artery disease, obesity, hypertension, post-traumatic stress disorder. But it has to be maintained at the allostatic level. Salutogenesis has to be maintained. We need to adapt and maintain these levels. So that requires the yogic way of life. If it is not there, of course, this diagram shows with the time the changes in the cortisol or the cytokines levels. Of course, we some amount of initial surge would be there, but then it would come back to the baseline level. But we need to maintain when this chronic stress are there, then we need to adapt at the more baseline level. It is there from the social threats or at the job level, at the family level, so many stresses today's world. But if you go into the basics of individual components of these, finally, it will lead to activation of the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis, activation of the adrenal gland, and glucocorticoids are the sympathoadrenal medullary axis, where sympathetic system get activated, and lots of the molecules or the genetic levels also. There will be changes, immunological levels, interleukins, beta 1, beta 6, TNF, all those things are lead to the all these problems. So these things have shown various regions in the brain, both at the animal levels, these stress-related inflammatory markers. The similar things have been shown even in the various regions in the brain, but the prefrontal cortices, they try to regulate this, and this prefrontal cortices inhibitory mechanisms. There are lots of GABAergic inhibition, which in turn inhibit the hippocampal amygdala and other stress-related responses, so that we can assess the stress in a meaningful manner and respond, not just react to that. So that would help us not just at the animal level, but in more meaningful manner, so that all these stress-related depression, anxiety, and other related things we can control. We can assess the stress, perceive the stress in a better manner, so that we can achieve this. That again, for that we need to look into various aspects. So it can, of course, when you start the Ashtanga Yoga, from the Yama Niyamas it will start. So the Yama Niyama is very important. How we can achieve the self-discipline, the ethical and the moral principles of yoga. When we achieve that, of course, when we do that with the physical components, the asana and pranayama, it would lead to more meaningful activation of these various regions, and we can prevent the formation of stress-related disorders. So this is achieved mainly because of the prefrontal cortices level. So this prefrontal cortices has wide connections to various regions, which I have told: amygdala, hippocampus, insula. All these are the stress perceiving in a lower animals. But as a human, we have the prefrontal cortices. We can assess, we can gauge how much is the stress and how is your optimal level. See, each just like when we take 5 people, their levels would be different. Individual levels of activations would be different. So we need to first understand what's our level and how much we can respond to that particular things. And we should not compare with the lower pinky finger. Can't compare itself with the middle finger. I am short. I can't be as lengthy as this middle finger. Like that, people will have different abilities, and each will have its own pace or his own rhythms in life. and accordingly he would get that his achievement. So that we need to understand, and we should not have that kind of competition among healthy competition is fine, but if it goes beyond the healthy level, it would lead to unhealthy competition. So all these GABAergic inhibitions on all the various centers that interactivate various centers in the brainstem. That's the nucleus tractus solitarius, nucleus ambiguus, dorsal medial nucleus of the vagus. These are all the centers how the brain controls the heart functions through the vagus and the sympathetic systems. So basically, if you consider the brain controlling the heart as a car, the vagus is the brake and the sympathetic system is the accelerator. So you need to have that balance. The sympatho-vagal balance is very much required. If I tell you, give you a car, but only one component, I can give you either the good accelerator or good brake. Which one you take? Of course, you can't drive a car with brake failed or dysfunctional brake. Even if you can go at 200 with the accelerator, you can't go beyond 20. You know when the brake is not working well. So you need to have the good brake. That good brake is the vagus system, and that we can achieve. Lots of studies have shown the asana and the pranayama, it will enhance the vagal activity. That's how we increase the vagus, the brake, and that's how we can activate the vagal system, the main brake. Of course, for the gastrointestinal system, vagus is the secretomotor, or it is important. So whenever you take food, it is a vagal activity will be more in the gastrointestinal system. That's why having after a good lunch or breakfast, you tend to doze off, especially during this online sessions. So you need to have the vagal activity will be more there. So that will helps to assimilate the energy, digestion, and take up the component of energy. That is again very much required. So you can get the energy from there, and that's how you increase the allostatic load. To face any challenge, you need the energy, you need the backup energy. That's how vagus achieves that. Like that, different system, not just the heart or the gastrointestinal system. If you see renal system, the endocrine system, all have this, the visceral systems have the sympatho-vagal balance, and the balance would be different for different organs, and you need to have that optimal balance. That is the samatvam. Samatvam yoga uchate is maintaining that balance. So that is possible with yoga, and this could be at the neuroinflammatory levels or the cognitive emotional levels at the short term, mid-term, medium term, or the long term. So if at hypervigilance or anticipation of adversity, social anxiety would be there whenever short-term exposure to the stress is there. But if you are not if you're just reacting to that stress, that will lead to disruption of the sleep, then there will be depressed mode, social withdrawal. Those things will be there. In long term, it will lead to various morbidities. It will be age-related, inflammatory disorders, and susceptibility, infection. And these are based on the neuro, immuno, and endocrine axis. This is again the same thing, the immunological factors, various hormonal factors. So all are activating at various levels. We need to achieve the optimal level. The whole idea is to achieve the optimal level, but most of the time, the person is not perceiving the stress and responding it in an effective manner. It would lead to either boredom, as I've shown in that bell-shaped curve, the boredom or the comfort level, or it would lead to the burnout, or it would lead to various disorders. So that we try to achieve with yoga that optimal level of the balance. So this could be at the various examples, social environment, social behavior, activation of all these hormonal as well as the various molecular factors, the transcription factors, signal direction, even at the genetic level. It could lead to whenever you are getting a chronic stress, there will be changes in the genetic level. There will be activation of various endocrine factors gets activated, and that will lead to the response. But whether it's a reaction or response, it's up to you, the individual levels. So even not just the neuroendocrine or immunological axis, there is one more axis, that is the gut microbiome or the gut axis. Even the gut is considered as the second brain. So the importance of the gut microbiome and gut as such at the neuroimmuno axis, there has been lots of interest of late, and lots of studies. Even at our centers, we are working on various gut microbial levels, or how the brain gut axis get altered. It's a two-way axis. How the 70 vagus, I've told, is very important parasympathetic nerve supplying various visceral organs, including the heart, lungs, and the gut. Here, if you study the vagus, the 70%, 70 to 80% of the fibers are afferent, moving towards the brain. So take lots of information from the gut. It could be what food you are going to take, what are all the various chemical levels are there. So the sattvic food, again, it would activate your the vagus afferent in a positive manner, or various that would lead to having a various microbiome. Again, as a human body, if you consider, you have more cells or more microbial cells than the actual the human cells, so-called human cells, if you consider. So again, it's a universe of its own. Anorania, Mahatomalian, that kind of system is there. So inside each microbiome, if you take, it's a universe of its own. So like that, it's a compilation of all those things, and how the central nervous system, through these derived neuroactive molecules, and how the neuroimmunoendocrine axis acts. There's lots of studies and interesting concepts are there. But as a yogis, we tend to eat more sattvic food that would help us to develop more sattvic responses and sattvic microbiome in the gut. So these are all the whole systems. It could be at the immunological level, at the gut microbiome levels, various systems like gastrointestinal, renal, endocrine, various cardio, respiratory system. So all these acts in a holistic manner, through which we can achieve these biological mechanisms of mind-body practices. So at the controlled breathing or the physical postures through asanas, pranayamas, at the musculoskeletal levels, or cardiovascular output, or the perception of the stress per se, that would helps mainly the prefrontal cortices, the conscious response that we can achieve at various levels. So it can occur at the top down or at the molecular to the system levels. So basically, the classic 4Fs are the fight, flight, fright, or freeze. But is it possible to face it anything as a calmly, confidently, coolly, compassionately? That's how the yoga trains to achieve the stress response. So it is not just the number of steps or the laps that you are going to have, but how you are going to face your stress. That's more important. And of course, the autonomic functions, we can, how the body responds to that kind of stress. So I'll give an example of snake or a spider, but in autonomic lab, we give the physiological stresses. Mental arithmetic is a stress when we ask the subject to count backwards from 1,000 or 100, that's a stress to the system. So how we respond? Just changing the posture from supine to standing, it's a stress to the system. The pulling of the blood in the lower extremities because of the gravitational pull, less input to the heart, that would lead to the decreased BP, decreased blood supply to the our brain, that will lead to those kind of giddiness and those things. That is compensated. So normally these things won't happen in a healthy person, but the patients with orthostatic hypotension or other disorders, they will get these kind of things. So these can be tested in a lab, autonomic function lab, or as a changes of the heartbeat is not a constant thing. We say heart rate is 70 or 80, something like that, but individual beats you take, it would change beat by beat. That's because of this, the accelerator or the brake system that I've told, and this can be tested in various levels. So finally, we need to have that balance in terms of parasympathetic or sympathetic. We need to achieve that balance. And as Ananda has mentioned, this is our first paper. And in this, we have seen how the cold pressor induced stress. This is another stress when we put the hand in a cold water, how the body responds in terms of change in the pressure or the heart rate. So a person with who has given training of Shavasana has shown a better response. So this is the initial quest we started under the guidance of Madan Mohan sir, and we are continuing that. Is one of our recent paper, and in which this Ayurvedic Dr. Siju was given a panchakarma. It's in Takradara. He has used a medicated buttermilk is pour over the head as a dhara, and that would achieve the activation of this prefrontal cortices that would help to alleviate the stress. The response in terms of sympathetic balance is improved. And the autonomic functions has helped us to understand how the body responds to that stress. Mainly the sympathetic gives fight or flight response, whereas parasympathetic is actively, calmly, confidently, passionately, you can achieve any kind of response. So you need to have this balance. The sympathetic balance is very much required. So to give an example, you can see the change in the heart rate here. It's beat to beat. If you see, there will be continuous changes in the heart rate. But the same person given some task in terms of mental arithmetic task, you can see the heart rate is increased and still that beat to beat fluctuation is there. Following that, the person's it will come back to baseline. So this is a normal, healthy response. But a same thing with a patient with major depressive disorder, you can see the baseline heart rate itself is increased. Person is already under some kind of compensation, and again the beat to beat changes. If you see, not much. So even with the responding or reacting to that, a person with the major depression, to give a positive or a negative, some kind of feedback, he won't respond or react to that. So not much changes in the heart rate. It is even after that stress test, there's not much change. It is maintained at higher level. He is already in a burnout zone. So that's the difference between a person, a healthy person, how he responds, and a patient with depression, how they are burnt out. So these patients need to give a proper treatment. It's antidepressant, or yoga also has shown a kind of antidepressant in these. We have standalone yoga treatment at the integrative medicine for very mild depression. When it is moderate to severe, we need to supplement with antidepressants or other Ayurvedic therapies. I will briefly talk about this. So yoga helps in this is a complex system, how the stressor will activate various sympathoadrenal axes and activation of neuroendocrine mechanisms. If it is not properly controlled, it could lead to diabetes, hypertension, or cardiovascular or other neurological or psychiatric disorders. But if you do yoga, first it will help you to assess the stress in a more meaningful manner. That the perception of the stress itself would lead to activation of the autonomic nervous system in a positive manner. There is increased parasympathetic instead of just the sympathetic overload. Hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis also, there will be modulation in the response, and the threat related regions, amygdala, dorsal hippocampus, insula, all these are negatively inhibited by the prefrontal cortices, and the reward related regions get activated. This by the imaging studies have shown. So these are all the positive aspects of yoga. Has been shown with various studies, even at the EEG, ERP levels, sleep studies, neurotransmitter level, autonomic function, of course, I've given examples of this. And it's been used in various disorders like epilepsy, Parkinson's disease, migraine, pain management, depression. These are the neurological disorders. Even the psychiatric disorders has been shown, and how exactly in these disorders it's helpful, the studies have shown. Again, briefly, I will talk about our approach at the integrative medicine. We have the integrative medicine where the yoga, Ayurveda experts sit along with the biomedical experts, be it neurology or psychiatric experts, and together they decide what kind of integrative system has to be, the patient has to take in consultation with the patient. Not a cafeteria approach where one person, the patient goes to one expert, then another expert. They will have confusion whether there will be some kind of interaction or some kind of the Ayurveda drugs and the allopathic drugs. Will there be any problem? Which one is better? Patient won't be able to decide. Whereas here, when they are together, and I am sure even at Salutogenesis Center or Integrative Center, where this kind of approach, where they sit together and decide based on the necessity of the patient. And studies have shown activation of GABA, neuroendocrine or immunological parameters, BDNF, neurotropic factors, decreased cortisol, all have shown at a meaningful manner. Dr. Hemant Bhargav has given this review recently, and at modulation of autonomic nervous system, neuroprotection, psychopathology, in terms of even imaging have shown there will be activation of those centers which have shown as important. Even at the genetic or molecular aspects also, studies have shown. So the various ongoing studies are there with integrative medicine, and they are also trying to understand the neurophysiological mechanisms. So we collaborate with them, and it's a kind of integrative along with the research using all these autonomic functions, EEG and sleep studies and other things. So currently we have a big grant, so in which 4 disorders: schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, mood disorders, multiple sclerosis, 2 psychiatric and 2 neurological, NIMHANS being mental health and neuro institutions, at 4 different levels: at the genomic or the molecular level, at the brain, at the various systems using imaging, autonomic functions, various other things, gut microbiome, as I told, or immunological regulators. So all these we try to understand the prakriti or the guna, how they respond in terms of genetic, molecular, at the system level. In addition to that, we also train various PG, PhD students, and it's a big grant for 5 to 10 years given to the Integrative Medicine Center, where I'm the co-investigator. Dr. Kishore, who is my close friend, and the Ayurvedic doctor, is the principal investigator. And we study at neuroendocrine, autonomic, and various levels. And these have shown, this is borrowed from Anand Bhai. He has nicely shown how the salutogenesis is achieved, and a similar kind of balance we can achieve through the yoga, increasing the vagal activity and other sympathetic mechanisms. So to summarize, all these neurophysiological investigations have enabled us to understand how the derangement of neural networks happens in stress, and stress-induced disorders, if it is not managed at the optimal levels of eustress, it will lead to distress, leading to various stress-related disorders. And yoga, how we can, starting from the perception of the stress and at various levels, be it at the genetic level, the molecular neuroendocrine axis, and at the system level, gastrointestinal, cardiorespiratory, and other system, we can achieve this. And neurophysiology of yoga, it's ongoing research. We are still we need to explore so many things. And as I told, Anoraniyan, Mahatomiyan, as you go in depth, you will see a big universe of its own. The whole of these mechanisms of various factors as a universe of its own. You can see even with the microbial levels, how that particular universe is playing inside our body to achieve this. And of course, it requires at various levels, not just at the physical. We need to operate at spiritual level, the psychic, as well as the pranic levels. Then only we can achieve the samatvam, which is called yoga. So I would like to thank you all for your kind attention, and I would like to thank all my members at this photo taken at various levels. So we have got a good team, and of course, it's I'm just representing my team. Whatever they have worked or achieved, I'm just presenting here. So I'd like to thank all the funding agencies, patients, and caregivers, and thank you all for your kind attention. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaviraj, for that comprehensive presentation. I was especially appreciating something that is often missed when we talk about yoga and stress, and that was the gut-brain axis and the importance of the human microbiome. I would like you to say a few more words on that, because microbiome has become a very popular topic of discussion, discourse, research. And I was just thinking, a few more perspectives from you on that, especially the gut-brain axis, because normally when we hear of stress, we hear the HPA axis, we hear about the SAM, sympathoadrenal medullary, the hypothalamo-sympathetic, we hear about the amygdala, we hear about the prefrontal cortex, but we don't hear so much about the gut brain. So I'd love to hear a few more thoughts from you on that, Kaviraj.
Yes, very interesting question. So we are working on that. So to basically summarize some of the preliminary findings that we got, based on the Prakriti, the Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic, three major types of people will be there around, or some combination of these. Again, in terms of dosha, vata, pitta, kapha, prakriti will also be there. So these, when we talk, studies have shown the microbial characteristics would be different. So studies based on your prakriti or guna, your microbial levels or microbial concentration would be different. There are different types and groups of these microbial organisms. That's a first thing, fundamental concept. Second concept, these people, the Sattvic people, they tend to take a Sattvic diet. That in terms of diet also, there is Sattvic, Rajasic, or Tamasic diets are there. So, of course, we all know fruits, vegetables come in one aspect, or pizza, burger, or non-vegetarian, or other things would be coming to the other extreme. So like that, we need to again balance out in terms of carb, fatty content, or the protein content in the food. But in a Sattvic manner also we can do that, or in Rajasic or Tamasic manner also. So now once we take those kind of foods repeatedly, and that would change the gut microbiome. And that's so gut microbiome as such, the concentration or the type of these organisms would be different in different individuals. So then they will have the output. these organisms, they themselves, they produce lots of chemicals. Some are important for digestion of food or the vitamins, absorption, all those things, they are very crucial. So, but sometimes they will also produce some of the things which are not so important or not so, it could be harmful also. So then again, this could be from your diet as such. Nowadays, lots of pesticides or chemicals are there, even in fruits and vegetables, because it's grown in that manner, not in a very organic manner. So all these things lead to changes in the gut microbiome, and that, as I told, the vagus is 80% of the vagus is afferent. It sends information from the gut to the brain. So when we say all these neurodegenerative conditions, be it Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and other conditions, now they are considering gut as the port of entry for all these degenerative molecules. Another port of entry could be the nose, through that the perforant pathways through the nasal pathway. So you can directly inhale some of the pesticides or chemicals also, but the gut also considered as the port of entry. So now these are still very early days in the research. So we need to study more on that. So if a person of tamasic variety type, if he has given sattvic food for a long time, say a few months, so what will happen to his the microbial pattern? All those things we are studying. As I told, as it's a big study in which we study at various levels, starting from genetic, molecular, gut microbiome, or the system levels. So it would give us a comprehensive idea about all these things. But still, it's not as simple as I'm talking. It could involve, again, as I told, it's a universe of its own when we talk about these gut microbiome.
Thank you, Kaviraj. That's a very beautiful perspective. I think we really need to next time look at a talk just on that angle itself. There's an interesting series of questions. We have a question from Mohan where he says, when animals are killed by the butcher, the stress, the anger, the emotions will release chemicals into that animal's body. How dangerous is this? Stress passing from animal to human is one part. And another person has asked a question which goes with it. I am vegetarian, yet I feel stress. Why? So I think these two can go together quite well.
Yes. So again, that's what I had told about the two extremes of diets. But again, even a vegetarian person could get stress. That's because it's not just the diet which matters. It's so many other things. So if your diet is one portion of your whole axis, so it's a very complicated system, as I've shown in that figure. So inside each system, again, it is complicated, that net diagram you will see. But finally, that the emotional aspects, when an animal getting killed, and that emotional level, how it pass it on to, there's some studies, some release of some chemicals during that time. It could be simple as the sympathotropinal chemicals like norepinephrine or cortisol levels would be high, and that would in turn lead to when you consume that food, definitely your emotional levels get affected. Again, this the emotion, how it plays around all these things. We can postulate, or we can give some hypothetical answers, but we need more studies in that. So once we get angry, or all these things, again, it's the stress related issues only. We're not able to control our emotions in a more balanced manner. That would lead to anger. So when we get angry, so many chemicals get released, and that in a chronic long-term studies have shown it would lead to hypertension, coronary related issues, diabetes, all those things. So the emotions and how it plays at the physical or the behavioral level, we need to study.
I think that emotional self-regulation, I think maybe one of the key ways that yoga can help a lot of people, including all of us. There is an interesting, there are three questions, I'll put them together. One is how yoga and meditation can help depression. Again, is schizophrenia 100% treatable? Is it chronic stress? So depression, schizophrenia. And then another question which goes with it, yoga seems to be useful for all conditions. Are there any conditions where yoga will not work? So I think, if you put these three together, you'll get a nice.
So when a person gets any kind of disorder, it could be again acting at various levels. The person might have some kind of predisposition, because of genetic or his various molecular pathways might get deranged in various manner. So if a person, same level of stress is given to person, some level would turn into a depressed patient, some would turn into schizophrenia. That's because of their baseline status would be different. Persons would be different, each person is different. Now, yoga, to some extent, we have seen many studies, yoga is helpful in many conditions. To answer that, yoga is not helpful in which particular condition, so it is difficult. Even in a depression condition, yoga is helpful in some individuals, whereas some outliers would be there. It is not that yoga is helpful in depression means yoga is helpful in depression in all the patients. No. There are some patients who won't respond based on their, again, genetic or molecular makeup, how they have come through this particular thing. So again, all those things, samskara or in yogic terms, we can discuss all these things. So one person is prone to develop, say, depression or schizophrenia, and he has some elements, so he can be improved with yoga. He will improve. Those things we are again studying, that the responder or non-responder to yoga. So what is the genetic or the molecular makeup of an individual to say this person is going to respond to that? Studies are being carried out in that.
Oh, wonderful. There's a question from Professor Ingen Hagen on, we say that yoga can impact the perception of stress. And how powerful can that be? One, through yoga, and two, on how much of impact does that have on the actual stress itself, the stress reaction?
So again, that perception, to understand the perception in a very meaningful manner. So you have to go back, you have to consider yourself as in a spiritual or philosophical way. It is in this particular janma, from your birth to death, you have this body. So in that way, if you consider, and based on your previous karma or your previous janma, samskara, or your prarabdhas, you have different affiliations. So you are going to get this kind of stress or some related issues. So you have to take in that angle. So the person might have some family related issues, some kids have some issues or something like that. So if you consider that's the stress, or you have to perceive it as a karmic philosophy. So you have to spend that karma, then only you can, if you consider in that manner, that stress level itself would reduce. So you think, okay, this is based on your previous janmas or samskaras you got at this thing. And then whatever you can do, that's at the karmanyavadika. up to what level. That's what I told. Each person has his own level of acting upon. So it is up to you to act for that particular thing. So then leave it to destiny or God or whatever you call nature or whatever. So that will happen. It will take its own due course. If you think in that angle, you won't get stressed. So that philosophy yoga gives. So yoga will help you to get that kind of philosophy. So in that way, then you won't get stressed in any of the things. So whatever you can do, you do at your optimal level. You don't take the fruit. You don't try to get this or anticipate the fruits. That's up to him to give you or not to give you.
I think this is a very interesting point you have brought out, that we realize that, there is a bigger picture than, just us being the victim of the circumstance. And this is where, most of the yoga research has looked at the yoga techniques. Not much has actually looked at the impact of the philosophy and psychology of yoga. And I think this is a very big lacuna in modern yoga research. We have been talking about lacuna in the research for the last 25 years, Kavi and I had those discussions. But I think a big lacuna is we're always looking at which pranayama will bring the heart rate down, which asana will improve cerebral circulation, but which aspect of yoga, philosophy, and psychology will change our perspective. I think this we need more research, because I don't think just doing Trikonasana and Dhanurasana can change your perspective of life too much. I think, as you have been mentioning, Karmanyevadikaraste Mapaleshu Kadachana, we have to bring in the Bhagavad Gita. We have to bring in Samatvam Yoga Uchate. We have to bring in Sthita Prajna. We have to bring in Karma and Dharma. So I think along with practices that are used in yoga therapy, we need to give our participants a certain amount of yoga philosophy and psychology training also, if it is to be yoga, because otherwise it will become exercise. So thank you for that beautiful perspective on changing our perspective, because I often make a statement that nothing can stress you unless you let it stress you. And I think you have reiterated that through your, we have the power of choice, and which is where, again, as you mentioned, the prefrontal cortex coming in. So thank you so much, Kavi Bhai, for this beautiful presentation. 25 years of listening to you. I think it was 1999, 2000 that met for the first time. So we had 25 years. We celebrate our silver jubilee around this time. And it's beautiful to hear you today. And I would like to go over to my team for the final words today.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Kavi, sir, for your wonderful presentation. And I thank all the participants who have presented here and had a wonderful sharing from the Kavi, sir. And next, we are meeting again on Friday, the last day of May, where we have two amazing sessions by Sri Udit Seth, sir, the president of Yogasana Bharat. He is going to talk on taking Yogasana sports to the world. And one more international speaker from the United Kingdom, Yoga Tilakam Kalavati Devi, who is the founder of Om Yoga Studio at Wales. She is going to talk on yogic practices to enhance women's health. With those few words, we close the session with the Shanti mantra. I request you all to close your eyes with Namaskara mantra. Take a deep breath in. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu sarve janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti. 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 Oh. Namaste and thank you all for the wonderful day. Have wonderful day to all of you. Thank you. See you on Friday.